In this video, we're going to discuss the parable of the camel, the lion, and the child as it relates to my experience as the corporate dropout. And this is otherwise known, the story is otherwise known as the three metamorphoses of the spirit, as told by the German philosopher Nietzsche in Thus Spake Zarathustra, which is a tale of his. And so when I found this story or this parable, when I first read it, it really spoke to me. And so that's why I'm sharing, because maybe it will speak to you as well if you are on a similar transformational journey. Now, it starts off with the camel, who has a specific purpose, which is to take on the burdens of the world and prove its worthiness. And so we often go through a phase where, especially as young people, where we want to prove ourselves to the world. And so we look out on the world and all that it has to offer, and we take on the burdens of the value system that the world offers us. And we do so willingly. So for example, in my case, I went to college, got my degrees, and on a spiritual level, was also seeking to, figure out how do I prove my spiritual worthiness, in a religious context and framework, both to the religious community that I was a part of, and which was reflective of the God of that religious community. And so the camel wants to be seen as strong and wants to take on as much as possible in order to validate that strength. And so for me, that also came in the form of dreams and fantasies of successes that I saw out in the world that I wanted for myself as well. And so once the camel has loaded up these burdens, it heads off into the wilderness. Then the first transformation begins, and our camel is now transformed into a lion. And so out in the wilderness, our lion has a purpose, and the purpose of the lion is freedom and lordship. And I remember vividly having this desire for freedom, but also lordship. The idea and concept of lordship was something that the young man Omari really wanted to attain. And I remember the first business that I LLC'd while I was working still was called House of Lords. And so I adopted this kind of a lordship mindset or desire. And so the challenge for the lion out in the wilderness is there is a dragon that is stopping his path. And the dragon is described in the parable as having 1,000 scales, each scale having a thou shalt. And these thou shalts are the values of the world that the dragon is like, you have to do this. And the response from the lion in order to overcome the dragon is, I will. And I will, if you look at the tense, it is, it's a progressive tense. Forgive my grammar explanation, because I'm not a grammar guy. But I will and I am, these two expressions are very connected. And so in that declaration, give a holy nay unto duty. This is a direct quote from the parable. The lion, has to give a holy nay even unto duty. And I remember one time somebody was like, hey, I think you should go get a job, because that's the right thing to do. And I remember having to reject and say no to that in order to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. Now, if you knew me at this time of my experience with the lion, I identified myself as Ras Omari, and Ras is an Ethiopian title for Lord, and it's also a a shortened title for a Rastafarian, and Rastafari, who was a emperor in Ethiopia. And the symbol, the insignia of that is the lion, which you see me wearing on my shirts. And so this was a symbolic representation for me of this part of the journey. So people often ask if I'm a Rastafarian or if I'm a Rasta, and no, I'm not. But I identified with the lion and the need as a black man to overcome, the dragon of society, which says this is what you got to do. And in order to do what I willed to do in my spirit. And so once the lion has overcome the dragon, he transforms now into a child. And this is necessary because the lion isn't capable of creating new values. The lion is simply capable of overcoming the existing value structure, but the child is essentially reborn, right? It's innocent. There is a forgetfulness and a new beginning, a game, this is a direct quote, a game, a self-rolling wheel, a first movement, a holy yeah. And so we go from saying no, in order to accomplish our will, to now being able to say yes again, but being able to say yes from a true and a pure place. And the game of creating, my brethren, is needed a holy yeah unto life. Its own will willeth now the spirit, his own world winneth the world's outcast. And this is where I am now. My children are growing up. My first son is 8, and I feel a kindred with his my inner child and his child experience. There's a kindred there because now I'm playing the game according to my will. I just finished watching him play around the apartment as Spider-Man. My wife and I were joking that he's in his own green screen world, right? As he's bumping up against the wall and everything. But as a child, you're able to just freely express this will. And it's necessary for the recreation of values in order to create our own world. And when we can create our own world, then we winneth the world's outcast. So there's a return again where now, anyone who hasn't made it into that realization themselves, they have something that they can potentially anchor to or hold as a symbol or icon for their own spiritual journey and transformation. Now, I hope you found that as insightful or inspiring as it is for me to both share and experience. Let me know in the comments. I'd love to know what you think. Peace.